You're listening to Intimacy Made Simple, the podcast where we talk about how being deeply known and loved meets the act of sex, so you can have true intimacy and make your marriage strong. I'm Mary Whitman Ortiz, your host. Today we're joined by my co-host, Rachel Landin, as we unpack how sexual intimacy draws you closer to your spouse. So if you would like to know what super glue all over your marriage feels like, this episode is for you. Please join us now. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you're here. How are you today, Rachel?
I am wonderful. It is scorching hot today. Last time we were together, we had scarves and gloves.
I know.
Today we need those fans.
That's right. That's right.
Ourselves.
Well, we're ladies of the South, so we can use fans.
Yes. Do you have them?
No. There it is again. We need an object lesson here. Listen, when this airs, the country will have just gone crazy over Super Bowl.
Yes.
And you know, there's some teams that just go all out and what they wear and their actions and certain movements and all that. Have you ever participated in that crazy fan place?
I'm not really a football fan, but I did go to a Jaguar game one time.
Oh, bless your heart.
My mom gave me tickets, and this is where I learned what a nosebleed section is.
Yeah, for sure.
When you're in the very, very top. But I do remember getting dressed up for that and just having a really good time at the football game.
Okay.
So, where am I going with?
Well, some people are super loyal. And, I mean, I watch the commercials. They buy stuff for their entire family.
Yeah.
And other people express their loyalty in a different way. And we are going to be tapping into that in today's talk.
Okay, so today, let's think about what we want to talk about. We've been talking about how God sees intimacy as a gift.
Right.
And a gift is good.
Yes.
And then we talked about the I, and that is the intimacy aspect. But what is the rest of that?
Yes.
Well,
today we're on letter F, and I just kind of want to prepare everybody because what I'm about to say about marriage doesn't get said often, and so it might kind of strike you as odd. So the F stands for fierce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what image you need, mama bear protecting her children, just like do anything to take care of what's going on. And fierce also makes me think of strength. Mm-hmm. Certainly, I've seen some football players, going back to that theme, that looked fierce. Yes. I don't know that I'd want to bump into them walking down a corridor or what have you.
Right.
But the way fierce applies in marriage, I've got two really succinct images or words to convey that. So the first one is cleave. Mm-hmm. And you may remember from the book of Genesis, we're told that a man is to leave his parents and cleave to his wife, vice versa. The wife leaves parents, cleaves to her husband. And I've heard that described in a kind of a humorous way. They say that the leaving part is the wedding, so that is the public display, and then the cleaving part is the honeymoon. So that becomes the private display of what that cleaving is. But when you cleave, you are choosing.
Yes.
And this is such a dedicated, purposeful choosing, maybe like the loyal fan who will do anything.
Right.
So a spouse who is so committed, so chosen their spouse, and like choose them again and again and again. You do have to choose your spouse over and over because you're committed beyond the feelings.
Right. It's a commitment, yes.
Some days it's easy. Some days it takes more work. It takes you being intentional. Mm-hmm. And one thing that happens with this cleaving aspect is we can't let the distractions in. Now, I know we work, we're busy, we have families, we're adulting, the whole bit, but those distractions, we just have to be mindful of them. Also have to be mindful of the distractions sexually.
Okay.
I will give a couple of examples of that. In our modern culture, most media is very explicit sexually.
Right.
So that could be a distraction. That could open a door with your thought process. I mean, that could stir up all kinds of things just on a casual viewing level. I know, and then it can go to an extreme, something much deeper, like pornography, like looking outside your marriage to an actual person, affair, emotional affair, that whole bit. Another area where that type of sexual distraction plays out is when some women enjoy romance novels, but that can make them wish for what's happening in that romance novel, make them play it over in their thoughts in such a way that they've substituted this fantasy for their spouse and their marriage.
Interesting, and that can even apply in some of the Netflix shows that we watch.
For sure.
We got almost all the way through one, and then it changed plots, and my husband's like, "We're not watching this."
I know.
It's so difficult because you're so into it, and then it's off. He's like, "You open that door, that is something you can't close." You know, so
takes you
you just
down
have to
that
be
road.
really mindful
You
of
do.
what you're opening yourself up to.
I had a client tell me one time that it wasn't the steamy romance novel, the heaving bosom,
Right.
because it was Amish stories.
Yep.
And that desire of focus on family, that was just a different place where her real life was, her reality was. So she had to even check that. Check it at the door, leave it at the door, whatever.
Right. I think that's where the personal relationship with Jesus comes in, and the Holy Spirit speaking to your heart. Because when you feel that conviction, you know it's there for a reason.
Yes. So I want to go back to another scripture with that, and this is 1 Corinthians 7, 3 through 5. And in this verse or this passage gets quoted, used inappropriately, because it talks about what your body is not your own, it's for your spouse.
Right.
But that's, of course, mutual on both sides. But the point to highlight there is that you want to intentionally give your body to your spouse in regards to sexual intimacy consistently, so that there's not a foothold for the enemy to get in and take some kind of advantage. Because when you're married, sexual intimacy is a part of the whole relationship. So it's valuable. It would not be in the Bible with these very explicit instructions if God didn't want us to know how to do that, and to have that as an option that is so healthy for us.
I so agree. That's great advice, Miriam.
All right, I'm not ready to leave this yet. So we've got the leave and cleave part,
right,
of how this makes your marriage fierce, because you are choosing, you're making that choice, something that takes effort and thought and attention. But then you are bonding. Now, here's the cool thing from a physiological point of view. What happens during sexual intimacy? We're aware of so many hormones that are being released, that type of thing. I've heard it described as super glue to your marriage.
Interesting. Okay.
And even to the point that if a couple has had an argument, I mean, there is an element of make-up sex that has a legit place. But if there's tension, if there's an ongoing issue, if you are able to get to a place of sexual intimacy even during that issue, it will make you closer. You can face the issue easier.
Interesting. Okay.
It's almost like counterintuitive, because if there's a problem, a lot of people pull apart because problems are big and scary.
Right.
But even in that season of something that might be trying, difficult, problematic, if you still pursue some type of consistent intimacy, sexual intimacy, then that is going to make you stronger, draw you closer together.
That's really good, because that's really hard to do.
I know, especially for women, because we are the spaghetti thinkers. Everything connects together.
Right.
And men are the waffle thinkers, where they are little compartments and they can
and
separate.
You tend to not want to give something that's so close when you feel so far away.
Absolutely.
So I think women sometimes feel that they can get their way by punishing, or
it happens, yeah, for
and that's
sure.
definitely not the way to go. So you're saying the best way to solve the issue is to commit to still pursuing each other, because that's the commitment that you've made.
It is. And this is one of those times, of course, it's sort of another topic altogether, about women and their inclination towards sexual desire and what that arousal path looks like for them. But because we're spirit, soul, and body, and we don't approach sexual intimacy just as a sex act in the body, then we have new information. It's like, okay, my body may be hesitant, or my emotions may be hesitant, or my spirit may be hesitant, but not all three at the same time. We're going to choose, because we did the leaving and the cleaving, and that will encourage us, motivate us to know this is a great choice. And I've had clients tell me that they valued sexual intimacy so much that they were mad when they didn't get to be together, and like it had nothing to do with the physical thrill.
Right.
It was, this is so good for my marriage. If I don't do this, then my marriage will not be at a great place.
Right.
So it was a choice. It was a mental choice, and everything else.
It almost is adding to the issue. Like, now you have another issue.
Right. Because yes, if you are not together sexually for a longer period of time than you've agreed on, or what have you, yes.
Right.
That does add another issue. I want to share just a couple other Bible verses about that. One of them is Ephesians 5:21 through 28. I won't go through all of this, but I always include verse 21. This is the one that usually gets skipped, because we go right to 22 in the wedding ceremony, when it's, wives, submit to your husbands. But 21 says that we submit to one another.
Yes, okay.
It's all based on that. And then when you get towards verse 28, it's this beautiful picture of that covering and nurturing the husband has over his wife. He loves her like his own body. There's tenderness, there's caring. So I like the sandwich there, those bookends, and everything in between is really amazing. And then one last verse, and this is Romans 12:1 and 2, which you've probably heard, but maybe not in a sexual connotation. Yeah. So we're presenting our bodies as a holy sacrifice unto God.
Right.
And we are choosing to not offer our bodies the way the world does.
Okay.
And in conjunction with that, from a neurological point of view, your body remembers. Now, we know that bodies remember trauma.
Right.
And different type of trauma can be stored at different parts of the body. So if it remembers trauma, can't it also have this muscle memory about what intimacy feels like? Like that, knowing the chemical reaction, knowing, yes, the pleasure, but also this incredible bonding.
Absolutely. I think it can, because I think that's why we practice things when we're trying to create muscle memory, when you're working out at the gym, when you're playing a sport, when you're doing something like that. But to understand that that can be a good thing for your relationship, for your family, for each other, that's interesting.
So there's going to be some spouses that are really happy to hear that.
Practice makes perfect. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. And when you have the foundation, the motivation,
right,
that this is all about strengthening your unit as a couple, then that's what makes the difference.
Becoming better together.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. So when I think about that, and I think about, couples and the issues that they have, pulling them apart instead of closer together, I think about why do you think couples are not aware when they're no longer close? Like, why do you think that happens? That it's usually a reaction versus, you know, taking care of it along the way. It's they get to a point where it's okay, it's time for a divorce. They haven't even,
Yeah.
you know,
And it's almost like the divorce surprised them.
right.
Yeah. But,
so why do you think that happens?
Right. Well, hardly anyone wakes up one morning and says, "Today's the day that I want to get a divorce." I mean, there's is that gradual progression, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. Certainly, the busyness of life,
right?
Adulting. Once you dated and you got him or got her, maybe you don't put as much effort into how you look and the little notes of kindness and all of those things that you do when you're dating. So it's like the dating mentality, some of it, we need to vamp that up. We need to crank that date your mate. That whole idea is legit. It's not just a relationship coaching slogan.
Right. I'm reading a book with my work right now. We're reading Atomic Habits, and I think that what happens is there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
And you start to divide up your time, and before you know it, it's 7 p.m. and you've done nothing to work on your relationship.
Right.
And then it's time for homework and dinner and these things, and before you know it, weeks have gone by, months have gone by.
Yes.
And if an issue does come up in between all of that, that just pushes you feel like you're not connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I can totally see how it happens. I guess it's like, what would you say is a way that couples could keep that from happening?
Well, I've got a couple of verses I want to share first, and one of them is Ecclesiastes 4:12, which is also often said during a wedding ceremony, and this is about the threefold cord that's not easily broken. So picture this, because if it's a cord and if it has three strands, it's been braided or twisted or something intentionally made it taut and strong.
Right.
And that is the image of the effort that it takes. So we have scripture that gives us some guidelines here. We have to keep that cord. It's not once and done.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're not aware how precarious it is.
Yeah.
That bond in marriage is kind of fragile and delicate.
Right. One of the things that God showed me, I don't know if I shared this last week, but he showed me my marriage is like a triangle.
Yeah.
And that God is at the top and me and my husband are in the corners and we're together. But as we pursue God, it makes that triangle stronger.
Mm-hmm.
But one time when I was asking him, about my marriage and just in general where things were, he showed me that when we aren't pursuing God together and when we aren't working on our relationship over time, that those walls are thinner. That when you pursue God, you make it very strong because there is a good and there is an evil. And when the enemy comes, when those little things come at you, it weakens those walls, which makes it change shape. So then if it changes shape, it allows other things to come in and it just destroys the triangle.
Wow.
And I just felt like he was really reiterating to me that to keep it strong is what protects you from the attacks of the enemy. And the ways to do that is to be working on your marriage, to be pursuing God. That's why we have to make time for devotions and prayer and relationships.
Right.
If you never go on a date with your spouse, if you never pursue anything that's fun or exciting and you just wake up every day and do the same things over and over, before you know it, you no longer have a triangle.
Sure.
And it's not a heart either.
We don't know what that shape is. Right.
So I definitely think.
I've got another idea that's super practical because we need to keep things right in front of us. And certainly around January 1st, everyone's thinking New Year's resolutions and it starts to fade as the weeks and months go by. But this is something that you can start at any point in your marriage, your relationship. And that is create a top 10 list.
Okay.
So these are features about your spouse that you admire, that you appreciate. Maybe they were things that first got your attention when you were dating, though all of those things. So make the list when you are not in argument mode.
Right.
Your list would be very different. Also on your list, include the things that you appreciate about your marriage and just about marriage, because you may not be at that place yet with your marriage where your goals are, your hopes are, but like, you're mixing all of the positive things about your spouse, about how you interact, about what your marriage has brought to your life, how it's enriched you, where you want to go, but make it 10 so that it's not too many,
Right.
but enough to keep that flow going. And I'm really big about writing things down, but of course you can keep it on your phone. Maybe people still have Post-it notes or things on their refrigerator. It needs to be a visual that you will go back to, and you can meditate on it. So we're getting back to that being intentional. When you make this list and you choose to meditate on it, when are you going to do that?
Right.
Because if you don't ever meditate on it, then that one experience of creating the list will not help you that long.
That's so true. You have to make the time. You have to say, okay, and it doesn't even have to be every single day. It can be, on Saturdays, we spend time together, or on Sunday morning before church, or, whatever. You just have to pick a time and make it happen. It has to be on a calendar.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not happening. Or you'll make excuses, I think. And then before you know it, weeks have gone by and nothing.
Yeah.
But that Atomic Habits book does talk about that. Like you have to implement it, and you can't expect everything to change in one day.
Right.
But over time, as you implement things, it does change your life.
And I'll add one other thought that just came to me. I had clients where one spouse felt like if their interaction wasn't always spontaneous, that they had fallen out of love.
Interesting.
They were counting on the spontaneity because that's what they had known. And that is a strong feature in dating, early marriage. Everything's new and fresh, but it's not the only feature that we are to cultivate. So if your feelings of love don't feel spontaneous, it doesn't mean you fell out of love. It just means you get to be more intentional now with things like putting it in your schedule and having a list and whatever else God brings to mind that can help you strengthen your marriage.
Well, and I think adding it to the schedule helps you to add more spontaneity. Because you're spending time together, you're actually communicating to figure out what the other person likes or wants or needs, and then you can meet a need. Or, yesterday I was out shopping for a gift for someone, and my husband likes a saying that's not all who wander are lost.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt the Lord tell me to buy it and write him a note in it.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
Give it to him. Like, instead of, because I was going to buy him a card, I'm like, cards are like $8. I could go to Starbucks one time or something. So I felt like God just said, I want you to just let him know you love him and give him something that because I feel God's been calling him to spend more time with him.
Nice.
And I wanted to give him the avenue to do that, to write in that book. And I just wrote him a really sweet little note in there and told him how much I love him and that I look forward to seeing what he writes in there.
Awesome.
But because I've been coming here and talking with you and, reading some books and just being more intentional about my relationship, I've been adding those spontaneity things in there because I realize the value of marriage and spending time together.
Yeah.
So it's important.
It is.
Yes.
It is. All right. I think we've given you something to think about today.
Yes,
and we're just all for how you can make your marriage strong.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.
We're so glad you joined us today. But what would make it better is if we hear from you. Do you have a question about intimacy you'd like to have answered? Here's how you can do it. Go to limitlessintimacy.com, find the podcast page, and there's a place for you to record and share your question. Now make sure you stay tuned because we might answer your question soon. Join us next time for Intimacy Made Simple.